lesson 3, and we're going to start from this part of the Gemara, Vitarti Lamali. This is a question, and what the Gemara is asking is, why do we need the Mishnah on Daf Chav Ches that says Nishbar Kadei B'Rishus Harabim, and someone slips in the water, and comes along Rav and says about that Mishnah that the only time you'll be chayiv is if his clothing get dirty, but if his body gets hurt, then you'll be pater because Karka Olam. And then we have this Mishnah that we just learned, which is on Daf Lamed. Let's show that to you, which is on, Daf Lamed. Let's bring that in. See that? Daf Lamed. And we have this Mishnah over here, which says again, Hashefich Mayim B'Rishus Harabim, that if someone spills water in Rishus Harabim, and came along Rav, and Amar Rav, that's only Leishanu El Tinfu Kelev B'Mayim. Why do we have to say that if we already said this exact story of someone slipping in water and getting that it only applies to getting his clothing dirty? We already said that before. So vitarti lamali, tarti means two. Lamali, why do I need both cases? So the Gemara answers, chada, one is b'maisachama for the summer. Whoops. This is for the summer. V'chada, and one of them, b'maisa geshamim, is for the winter. Chada means one, and maisa geshamim is the winter. What's the difference between the summer and the winter? There's water spilling on the street, and we're making this big deal that I wouldn't know that it's only for clothing, or that you'll be chayiv in the summer, and I wouldn't know in the winter. So comes along the Gemara and explains. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, the Dalet is as, and Tanya is a brisa, right? That we learned many times. So kol elu shamru. All these things that our sages have said that you're allowed to do in the Rishus Harabim, and including Paiskin Bivaseyim, which means that you're allowed to open. And Bivaseyim is a drain, a water drain. And Vigarfim Mariseyim, and you're allowed to empty. Mariseyim is actually septic tanks. Doesn't sound that great, but you're allowed to actually open this up into a Rishus Harabim. The history of this is that when Yeshua ben Nun, when they divided the land, they split it up. They had some certain conditions of what people are allowed to do in order to help the society. And one of the things is that you're allowed to empty out your drains during the winter because the streets are wet anyway, and that was the rule. So the Gemara says like this, it's a brisa. B'maisa chama, in the summer, ein lehem rishus, they do not have permission to empty these things out. But b'maisa geshamim, in the winter, yesh lehem rishus, you do have permission to empty the drains out. Let's bring up a picture here so you can see. That's probably like an old street, and here you have 4 drains, but I don't know, looks rather modern with that neon blue. But nevertheless, it doesn't look that great, but in the winter it's muddy anyway, and no one cares. So, but in the summer, where the streets are nice and dry, then you weren't allowed to do that. So, va'afal pisha b'rshus, even though you had permission in the winter, im hiziku, if it caused damage, chayavim l'shalim, you're obligated to pay. Okay, now this is a big chiddush, that in the winter, when you do have permission to open up the drains, if that stuff that comes out causes damage, like a bar, you're obligated to pay for that. This is very unique. I don't know of another example of something that you're allowed to do, you have permission to do, and you'll be responsible for damages that it caused. Usually you're obligated in all of Nezikin. You're obligated for things that you were supposed to watch better. You should have watched your ox. You should have closed the gate. You should have hid it in a better place. So you go through the whole Baba Kama, Baba Metzia. You always did something wrong, and that's why you're going to be chayiv. Here, you did something with full permission, and you're still going to be chayiv for the damages that it causes. I think this is like a really unique case. Maybe it's possible that you were supposed to stand there after you opened the drain and watched and make sure, but it doesn't seem like that's the issue here. So it seems like you're going to be chayiv even though you had permission to empty out the drains, and the caused damage, got someone dirty, his clothing dirty. You would have to pay for that according to Rav. As we learned in the last year, that there was a difference between Rav and Shmuel. Okay. Is there anything else that we should speak about this? Well, the two Mishnayos, I didn't clarify which Mishnah is referring to what. One is the summer and one is the winter. And another point that I didn't clarify is once we say that you're chayiv in the winter, when you're allowed to empty it out, so for sure you're chayiv in the summer when you're not allowed to empty it out. You didn't even have permission to empty it, so for sure you should be chayiv. So the Nimukei Yosef discusses both of these issues, and I'll let you look that up, or maybe we'll discuss it in class. Next piece. Hamatznia es hakoitz. If someone hides a thorn, v'chulu, etc. Circling that because it's extremely important. And I want to tell you two rules. One rule I was taught in yeshiva is that anytime you see brackets in a Gemara, you always read the brackets. Anytime you see a parentheses, you skip it. But brackets, like as we see right here, brackets we always read. Now the v'chulu, the etc. That's brought. The second point that I want to bring out is that's the any etc. any v'chulu that's brought in a quote is very important, and the reason is because the Mishnah that says Hashefach Mayim b'Shesharam Huzuk Ma'achai B'Niska. Okay, the Mahamatznia es hakoitz v'esas chuches. That's the quote, but then it says v'chulu, etc. And that etc. is referring to. Let's change the color so we'll clarify. We'll know what we're talking about. Hagoider es gidrei b'koitzim. If you make a fence with thorns, that's really what we're talking about. So it's really, the whole quote is really in this, I don't remember what color, it's always in this v'chulu. Okay, so based on that, we should really say, if someone builds a fence out of thorns, so Amar Rabbi Yechanan says, Leishano, we did not learn this, Ella only, and we've spoken many times that Leishano Ella is a Talmudic way of saying Bameh Devarim Amurim. When were these words said? The Mishnah uses the phrase Bameh Devarim Amurim. The Gemara uses the phrase Leishanu Ella. We only learned this in the case of Mafriach. That means it's stretching out. It's stretching out into the thorns are stretching out into the Rishus Rabbim Aval Mitzamtim. But if you are pulling it back, or maybe you trimmed it, then loy. Actually, the Bach changes this to aval mitzamtim. It should say pater, according to the Bach. The Bach never writes in the Gemara. He just puts a little circle, and then you can find the Bach. Let's see if it's right over here. Oops, no, it's not there. Here's the Bach. Aval mitzamtim pater. You see that? Aval mitzamtim pater. Okay, back to our position. Aval mitzamtzim, but if you pull it in, then you're going to be pater. My time of pater. Why will you be pater? It's a question. If you pull it in, you have thorns. Thorns are dangerous, and it's right on the side of Rishus Rabbim. So Amar Rav Acha Brei de Ravika. Rav Acha, the son of Ravika, Brei is son of. The son of Ravika says Lefi, because she'in darkan shel bnei adam. It's not the way of man le'eschachich, to rub biksalim, against the wall. So the reason why you'll be pater if you pull the thorns back is because it's his problem, the guy in the street. You're the owner of the thorn bush here, but it's the person who's walking on the street who did the strange thing of walking against the wall. You're not obligated to, you're not required to pay for every strange thing that a person does and gets hurt. You did something that's totally normal. It's actually not totally normal, but you did enough of you were careful enough that you didn't have it stretching out into the street, and that's why you will be pater. However, and the person that walked by, it's his fault. He shouldn't have walked so close. Okay, this was lesson 3.